I'm Jack, and welcome back, because today I'm going to give you guys a review for a new season of a Star Wars Disney Plus show that came to a close a month ago, Andor Season 1. It is created by Tony Gilroy, and it stars Diego Luna reprising his role as Cassian Andor from Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, with the supporting cast of Stellan Skarsgård, Genevieve O'Reilly, Adria Arjona, Fiona Shaw, and many more. And with that said, let's get started. Andor follows Cassian Andor years before the events of Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, as we see him grow from becoming a thief scavenging the galaxy on a mission to becoming a member of the Rebellion as he goes on difficult missions to help the Rebellion's cause. For years, this is a Star Wars show that I've always been really excited for, because I did love Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, but it's not my most anticipated of the shows this year because we had Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett. So now that we were leading up to Andor, I was looking back at Star Wars shows recently and how I was really disappointed in Book of Boba Fett. And Obi-Wan Kenobi is a show where I enjoyed it. There's moments I love, but as a whole, it should have been a movie, and I did not think it capitalized on the potential it had in front of it. So I was coming into Andor hoping it was going to be the show that's going to blow me away. It's going to really surpass my expectations. So now that I finished Andor Season 1, I loved it. Andor is a fantastic show with great characters, great storytelling, beautiful visual effects, and it is by far my favorite Star Wars show on Disney Plus to date. Kicking off with the positives, the performances here are fantastic here. Diego Luna is now seasoned into the role of Cassian Andor, who I've always really liked him in Rogue One, but now he got to expand his range as his character a lot more now that we're seeing a younger Cassian Andor before he becomes that rebel hero we knew in Rogue One. And I love the character dynamics he has with everybody and how all these conspiracies, everything is just centering in on Cassian Andor himself. And Diego Luna is so great as his character, as he has scenes with Adria Arjona's character, Bix-Caleen, and Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen, and all these characters that he interacts with throughout the show. He is fantastic once again, and I really like him as his character. He's growing to be one of my favorite Star Wars protagonists in recent years. And Stellan Skarsgård blew me away as Luthen. He is one of the best Star Wars characters to come out of these shows. He is absolutely compelling, and I love how he has a mission, he has a clear motivation, and so as how he's trying to orchestrate all of these things to happen so that the rebellion can go all out against the Empire, because of how we are now in a time frame where the Empire is taking over the galaxy. People are too afraid to step up, and what does he do? He goes out there trying to set things off from the shadows, and he is brilliant. There are monologues he delivers, especially in the 10th episode, that really had me in awe because of how phenomenal he is on this show.
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
He is such a great and compelling character, probably the most compelling character on the entire show, and he took my breath away. He is fantastic here. And Genevieve O'Reilly once again returns as Mon Mothma. Also really great. She has a much more subtle performance with great small moments to where just conversations with one another. You see how she responds and how she has a lot of layers to her, where you see her go from being someone who is like a spokesperson or such, a representative, and now she later becomes a central figure in the rebellion, and she is fantastic here. And even the supporting cast here is really great, especially Adria Arjona as Bix-Caleen, Kyle Soller as Cyril Karn, and Deidre Go as Deidre, who is the best Imperial villain since Orson Krennic in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. She is a very compelling character. She's menacing, and she is not somebody to mess with. And everybody here in the whole crew is awesome, especially with just their episode appearances they have, whether they're big or small. Everybody is really good in this show. The visual effects and cinematography and the practical effects are so impressive that it is by far the best looking Star Wars project since The Rise of Skywalker came out, because recently with Star Wars shows, they've used the volume, and it looked fantastic in The Mandalorian, but in Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi, it looks very off. It just feels like they're using it for things that the volume isn't quite the best suited for. And I'm happy that with Andor, they went with practical effects, especially in episodes 4 to 6 with the Alderney arc, and so as how they film the locations. It feels practical, it's real, it's lived, and it doesn't feel artificial. It feels like you're in a real place with actual characters, and I really appreciate that so much, where you have environments that feel real, like, oh, you could see them, and so as how they bring it to life, to where it makes the show feel more expensive, but in a good way, where it looks good. The visuals, the set pieces, the set design is so impressive, and it stands out among Star Wars projects recently. And I was constantly just mesmerized by how beautiful of a show Andor is with its production quality. And I really want more Star Wars shows, and even Disney Plus shows in general, to take notes from Andor. Another aspect of the show that is very well presented is tension. This is the most intense situations I've seen for a Star Wars Disney Plus show, where I care about these characters and even these dynamics they all have with one another, whether it's they're on a mission, they're going on a breakout, or just these little character interactions with one another. I feel the weight and the intensity behind all of it, that I was constantly on the edge of my seat, whether it's an episode that's very much focusing on developing characters, or whether it's where the spectacle really kicks into high gear. I was always on the floor because of how mesmerized I am by the tension, where it's so well written with the line delivery, and the character dynamics are impeccable, and just the situation they get into, where they do a good job of building up these events so that when you know it happens, and when it does happen, it is satisfying with how it plays out. It's so well executed and well presented with how it develops the suspense for me to care for Cassian Andor and all these other characters in their fight against the Imperials. Nicholas Britell composed the score for Andor, and he did shows like Succession, and this score is great. I love the opening title intro, and this is by far the most memorable Star Wars score for a show since Mandalorian. Book of Boba Fett has a cool title theme, but I don't remember the rest of the score, and Kenobi has by far my least favorite Star Wars score in general, because outside of the John Williams theme, I barely remember a single track out of that show. But Andor's score is fantastic. It's fabulous. It's well composed, and so is just the recurring motifs, where it always gives you an idea when things are going to escalate or de-escalate, crescendos, decrescendos. It's very well composed, and it has a very catchy theme with the Andor theme, and so has very memorable scores just later on, especially when things like One Way Out happen. And even the Alderney heist. The score is fantastic here, and Nicholas Britell just once again composes another phenomenal score for the show. Andor also has 12 episodes, which is the most I've ever seen from a Disney Plus show in general, from what I have seen, and I'm happy to say the 12 episodes are utilized very well. Rather than having one whole story for the whole season, which it does have, I love that they split each of these episodes into mini arcs, where you got the first 3 episodes and it's Ferrix, and you get episodes 4 to 6 and that's Alderney, then you got 7 to 10 and that's the Narkina 5 arc, and then you got those final 2 episodes that wraps up the entire season. It's a very creative and unique way to have storytelling on the shows, because recently there's always just 6 to 7 episodes, and I'm not a fan of the 6-episode format. It's way too short. You can't do very much in that time frame, and you're always going to leave things underdeveloped and unexplored. But with Andor, they're able to tell the whole story very well, and so as leaving me on the edge of my toes and not feeling like time was being wasted. It feels like every episode mattered for what was about to occur next, and I like that the show decides to really do something with the Disney Plus format, and it ends up being the best presented Disney Plus show in general. And I really want Disney Plus to put more episodes into the shows, because if Andor has 12 episodes with arcs throughout, and they do them phenomenally, then I want this for other Disney Plus shows, because Andor set a very high bar for storytelling on these shows. Andor is a very unique Star Wars project where it's a lot more grounded than what we've had recently. There's no Jedi or Sith or the Force or lightsabers. It's just specifically focused on rebellion versus the Imperials before the events of Rogue One and the original trilogy. What I like about this is It makes the show feel more grounded and realistic. We're getting something more gritty that we don't get very often in Star Wars. And it ditches some of the more fantastical elements while still having some of that elements in the show with something more fresh and new for the franchise, to where Tony Gilroy brings new life into Star Wars by doing something new. Because recent Star Wars shows do heavily lean onto the fantasy side of things, and that's not an issue. But I like that Andor is a breath of fresh air. It does something new for the franchise. Or after how the recent shows have played out, Andor is that show that really just serves as a refresher for Star Wars. And you still have all the things that make a Star Wars project in Andor. It's just a lot more realistic and subtle, to where it's against anti-fascism, and so as fighting against tyranny, the rise of the rebellion. It still has all the things that make Star Wars project a Star Wars project, especially hope being a big part in Andor, and I appreciate that a lot. Another thing about the show that I love is Cassian's transformation over the course of the show. Obviously, because this is a prequel, you know where he's going to end up. You know how he's going to die in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. But we see the beginnings. We see he's on a mission, and how the show kicks off the show on a very strong note, where he kills these 2 Imperial officers because they were trying to do stuff to him that is not very a good thing. People would react to the same way Andor did in that situation. Then it kicks everything off. And what's good about the show is you see him go from being a man on a mission, a lone wolf and a thief who doesn't want to ally with everything or do anything that's remotely in favor of the Empire, to becoming someone who would become a big figure in the rebellion. You see him learn how to be a team player. You see him learning how to work with people, and so as seeing him be more selfless, where he's doing things for other people, especially in the Narkina 5 arc. And I really like that a lot, to where it's well done, to where you clearly see throughout the show how he has grown over the course of this season. And I'm really excited to see where season 2 takes him when that comes out, because I really like the character of Cassian this season, and I just love his transformation. I could go on about the show all day, because Andor is the Star Wars show that I've been waiting for a very long time. It delivered on all of my expectations and even took them a couple of steps further. It is so satisfying. It's beautiful. It's well acted, well produced, full of well written dialogue and tension, with some amazing spectacle when we get them. Andor is a great spy thriller show that really delivers on the premise and the potential it had, and it is by far my favorite Star Wars show to date. So in the end, I'm going to give Andor an A+. I'm going to talk about a few things when it comes to spoilers here, because there are things I want to talk about here. We got Andy Serkis as Kino Loy in the Narkina 5 arc, and I was so surprised to see him in Star Wars again after playing Snoke in the sequel trilogy, and I love what they do with Andy Serkis on the show. In just a span of 3 episodes, I cared and connected with Kino Loy, and seeing him go from being this figure who's like, we got to have these ships, we got to keep it going, we'll all get out, to becoming a very important figure in that prison break. Beautiful. He delivered a spectacular performance as this character, and I love what he does throughout this arc, and so as just me connecting with him and how he interacts with Cassian Andor. And it really broke my heart in episode 10 when they reached the exit point and he says a simple line of dialogue that is so simple, yet it hits so hard, and that is,
what? What did he say? Can't swim.
and it broke my heart when he says those lines, because we never saw him after that, and I'm wondering, is he okay? I want to know what happened to Kino Loy. I hope we get him back for season 2, because I loved Andy Serkis on the show. The Alderney arc is amazing. I love how the first 2 episodes really are trying to develop the robbery, have us develop the relationships between Cassian and Val and Skeen and Gorn and Sintra and Nemik and everybody, so that when the actual robbery commences, it's effective. And They do a really good job here, and I love the practicality of it, and so is them trying to prepare for this robbery so that they could steal all the credits from the Imperials. And it's so satisfying watching The Eye, which is one of the best episodes of the show, where the robbery really commences, and it's intense, it's jaw-dropping, there's stakes, which I really appreciate, to where even though it's a prequel, you got the clear stakes to where you really feel the danger, and you're wondering if they're going to make it out alive outside of Cassian Andor, because the robbery is epic, it's exciting, and it is one of the best episodes of TV I've seen all year. And it's followed by an arc that takes how good that was even further, and that is the prison break arc on Narkina 5. And how good the Alderney arc is only highlights how great the Narkina 5 prison break arc is, where we're seeing Cassian arrested. He's in this horrible situation where now he's locked up. He's with all these people, and they're trying to form a breakout plan so that they can go free because of having mysteries like, oh, what happened on level 2? Are they really going to be out? Are they going to be transferred to another cell? Are they going to be stuck there forever? It is so compelling and well written and full of intensity that every moment mattered, and so I was just building up to things that are so exciting. And my favorite episode of the show has to be episode 10, One Way Out.
We are being transferred to some other prison to go and die. And that ends today. There is one way out right now.
It is satisfying. The prison break is amazing. I was on the edge of my seat, and I was just shocked by how fantastic that episode is, with how it progresses the characters, what happens with the prison break. It is what I want out of Star Wars. I appreciated and love what Andor did for Star Wars, that this is setting a super high bar for the franchise, that I'm wondering, how could they live up to Andor because of how well written and well created the show is? Because episode 10, my favorite episode of Star Wars TV as a whole, and so as this whole show being absolutely top tier Star Wars, that it's my favorite Star Wars content since the original trilogy. And that says a lot, because I love Force Awakens and I really like The Mandalorian, but Andor is my favorite piece of Star Wars to come out in the Disney and Lucasfilm era of Star Wars, and it is definitely one of my favorite Star Wars projects of all time. The finale is also very satisfying, with Marva's speech about fighting against the Empire and how it leads to all these breakouts, and so as continuing to develop the suspense, especially with Andor trying to save Bix and all these things taking place, what happens with Daedra and Cyril. Really great stuff, and it's a very satisfying finale for the season that wraps up all these character storylines of the season while setting things up for season 2. And even the end credit scene, where we find out that one of the things that Cassian and all of them were building on Narkina 5 were pieces for the Death Star, and that reveal sent chills down my spine, and it made his death in Rogue One even more tragic, because it meant that he unknowingly was building parts for the weapon that ends up causing his demise. And it hits hard, but it is a very chilling and epic end credit scene. And I'm so excited to see where season 2 goes, especially with the 12-episode arcs now being every 3 episodes is set 1 year prior to the events of Rogue One. And so I'm really curious to see what happens next with the show, and especially now that Cassian and Luthen are going to work together at the very end of the show. So I'm very curious to see where Cassian and Luthen's relationship goes in season 2, and so as how the rebellion grows as they continue their fight against the Empire. So yeah, that's my review for Andor Season 1. What are your thoughts on it? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Stay tuned for some upcoming videos I have planned. I'm going to have a spoiler review for Avatar: The Way of Water, and so as reviews for Babylon, which I'm going to see very soon, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So please go stay tuned for all that fun stuff coming your way very soon. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So please go do that while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And stay tuned for more.